Thanks so much, Amy, for that introduction. I wasn't sure who you were talking about. First of all, let me tell you what a pleasure it is to join you today and to be allowed to give you some of my thoughts. This looks like a huge wad of speaking, but it's really like 24 font, so I don't need my glasses. So it's not actually that much. But I have this quote that I would really like to share. Some of you may have heard it before. I tried to find out who is the originator of it, but it's been attributed to like everybody from Mother Teresa to, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows who did it, but so as for attribution, it's somebody. And I think, you know, when I first heard it, I thought, well, that is the description of a military spouse. And it's, we the willing, led by the unknowing, are doing the impossible for the ungrateful. We have done so much with so little for so long, we are now qualified to do anything with nothing. So some of you out there are like kind of going, ha, ha, ha. But, and I think it's a very description of everything from working in government service to being a parent to any school committee you've ever worked on sort of has the same theme to it. But I want to say that there are a lot of things that are true and some things that now ring very false to me. You know, first of all, I would say, you know, we the willing, the vast majority of us married into the military. I don't meet that many spouses who are actually married for a while and had it just dropped on them. There was usually at least a conversation of it. So for the most part, we are volunteers into this situation. And very often, we do travel in uncharted waters that our predecessors could never have predicted. Who knew in 1990 that today almost everybody over the age of 12 would have a cell phone, and that the internet would be on that cell phone, and that you could call your spouse in a foreign country and have a conversation with them at just about any time? And who also knew that that could create huge security challenges for our service members and for our families because of this easy access, as compared to when I married in the 3-week letter that went on a boat. Maybe it got there, maybe it didn't, maybe it arrived 6 weeks after your service member came home. And it does seem to many people that we are doing the impossible. We run happy and successful marriages. We have happy and successful families and careers, and do this all while moving all over the country to places that we did not necessarily choose. It's not like, ooh, I got a great job offer in Atlanta, let's move there. But I will say that happily, much more of the nation is very, very grateful for what we knew. It's not that we're doing this for the ungrateful. Most people, I do think, are grateful, even if they don't understand our circumstances. And I'm happy to say that the done so much with so little has vastly changed since I married in. We have world-class childcare. Our base housing and infrastructure has vastly improved since 1984 when I married in. We have family-friendly fitness centers. We have family readiness programs. None of those existed when I married in. There was no childcare on base when we got married. And we have very vocal spouses and service members who advocate for continued adaptation of our military life to the way we live today. It has always been true, I would say, that we can do just about anything with nothing. And hopefully it will continue that military spouses can create goodness where others see none, and homes where there's no blood, family, or relatives, and careers where other people see and employment wasteland. There's a lot of conversation these days about facilitating military spouse employment and career development. I think in many ways this is long overdue. Spouses were looking for meaningful employment at a reasonable salary when I married in. It's not like everybody stayed home. I worked for for 30 years until I got to a point where there were a lot of demands on me outside due to my husband's position. But this was going on when I married in. It's nothing new. The problem is that there is no average military spouse. We're all unique. We have differing job histories. We have different employment histories and experiences. And we have different desires in regards to what is the right size and the right shape for our career goals. And nobody can decide that for you. So it's very, very important that all military spouses are actively engaged in deciphering what is their personal pathway to achieve both their career and their family goals. There's no standard path, and so I think you need to realize that there are a lot of different avenues available to you, but you have to decide what your goals are for you and your family before you can figure out that avenue. For some of us, it's going to be a very straight and predictable path. We're going to decide on a career. We're going to go get educated to meet the criteria for that career. We're going to start in various positions, and we're going to work our way up until we're at the level that we desire. For some people, it's going to be a very broken and erratic kind of a pathway to get to what you want to do. There are going to be episodes where there is unemployment, underemployment, where you put things on hold because of family priorities, or I think exploring different career options is really a very common thing today, not just among military spouses. People get degrees in things all the time and either never work in them or work in them briefly and decide it is not for them. Some people take a break when you move to a duty station overseas because you are unable to be employed in your career, or because you choose to explore the area that you're in as a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But for far too many, people find that working in a career, their business values time in the job. So your promotion opportunities are based on time within the corporation, time within that position. That does not necessarily fit for a lot of our military spouses in order to advance. So it's going to require a lot of creativity and connecting with others who can support your efforts. Mentorship, taking chances, and connecting with all of the different resources available are really the steps that are going to be necessary to achieve your career and your goals for what you would like to do. At some point, we're all going to separate from active duty, and that may not be at a time of our original choosing. We all know people who came in saying, I'm just going to do one enlistment. And then 12 years later, they're like, holy cow, like, I'm still here. I guess this is a career. And then we have other people who are convinced that they're going to stay for a very long period of time, and either because of circumstances or because the service says, thank you for your service, but we actually don't need you anymore. So have you built this flexible kind of a plan that can fit with whatever happens outside of your control? Have you created something that can address the changing environments that you're in? So this means you want to look at your opportunities somewhat differently than your original plan may have mapped out. You may have said, well, I'm going to start here and go here and do this and do that, and that may not be possible. So I want to say something important. If you cannot embrace where you are and what's going on with your life at this moment, it will be difficult to create a career that fits that space. So I'll say that again. If you cannot embrace where you are and what's going on in your life at this moment, it will be difficult to create a career to fit that space. You can wish and hope all you want for what you would like to happen, and it rarely happens. So you need to look at where you are and what's going on and build your life, your family needs around what's happening now. So who gets a say in planning your career and your future? Well, you do. Your spouse probably does, and maybe even your children's needs will. What about those of your aging parents that may put demands on your life? Or maybe your professional requirements. Some people will find they're in a profession that literally does not exist in the location that you're at right now, and you cannot meet the needs of that profession for some of your continuing education, for hands-on work or whatever, because of the place where you're at, such as being stationed in, I don't know, Djibouti, or Italy or somewhere else. So actually, I'm very happy that Brittany Bacher is going to follow up my comments, because she's sort of like our resident expert on how to do this better. A number of us met at the USO this summer to talk about military spouse employment pathways. And so I envisioned this sort of like that game of life, the board with the pathway, and you spin a little wheel, and you get a little car that has like a little pink person, and then you get married, and you put like a little blue person in there or something like that, and it's a single lane, and you spin this wheel that decides your fate. So I think we need to update that model for our military spouses. First of all, get rid of the pink and blue little people, because that just doesn't even fit our plan anymore. Change the single lane to a big multi-lane highway with all sorts of exits and on-ramps, and get rid of that end point. It was like Shady Acres Golden Retirement Home or something like, at the end, that was like your end goal at the end of life. And I think that's like, get rid of that, because it's like, spend a month traveling in Europe, or I don't know, other kinds of things. So I was thinking about what would that wheel of life say now? What are some of the little cards that you would pick up and find out now? And it may say, unaccompanied tour to Djibouti, rearrange childcare. Or how about move 3 times in 14 months, lose a turn at employment. So how will you make that card you pull up instead say, co-author self-help book with fellow spouse and sell 100,000 copies in the first run? How about obtain educational assistance funds through GI Bill and Superemployer to complete your master's degree in 3 years? That's what we're hoping for today. But I do hope you haven't been waiting for some kind of spin the wheel game of luck to get you, to where you want to be. I know that has not worked for me at all. And not all of the things that happen that interfere with our game plan are bad. So after 5 years of, I'm a physical therapist. For about 5 years, I worked in acute care and trauma care, and I was a clinical supervisor, so that all of the student physical therapists who came into the department, I was in charge of their assignments, making sure that they were getting the exposure that they were supposed to have. It was a great step up. And then we moved to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina in 1985, and it was an eye-opener. So I didn't see anything that fit what I wanted. The nearest trauma center was in Greenville, which without traffic was about 65 minutes. And with traffic would have I just couldn't do it. So I didn't want to go there. And I decided that taking any PT job nearby was better than no PT job. So I took a job in the Onslow County school system, and I was an itinerant physical therapist, which means that I covered 12 schools within the school district. There was one other physical therapist and my dear friend Janelle. She had done that entire 24 school district by herself and finally got the school system to pay the money to hire somebody else, and that was me. What I didn't know I was going to get was a fabulous friend and mentor who helped me, one, fall in love with the kind of work I was doing and working with children, and two, made me feel like I could handle anything that came up professionally. So I think that's very important. It was my lucky day, and I continued to work in pediatrics for the next 25 years and absolutely loved it. It provided me with the flexibility I cared about, the personal interaction I loved, and I did it for the next 25 years and absolutely never regretted it. So you have to think about what kind of gold is buried in that job situation, that job you got that wasn't what you wanted, or that experience that you said, this isn't what I planned on. What's the magic that's hidden in that experience? For me, it was discovering that, I had done a pediatric rotation in Children's Hospital in Boston during the summer. All of my cases, my entire caseload was either intractable brain tumors, inoperable brain tumors, or little drowning victims. And every week I had about 3 of my clients pass away. I said, I will never work in pediatrics. I couldn't do it. I did not know there was this whole other world of pediatrics that I loved, and I ended up every treatment session with a sloppy kiss and somebody hugging me and telling me they loved me. That was my gold that was buried. So, and a lot of us don't really know, what we're getting into half the time anyway. So, college, you're like, oh, how hard can that be? I was like on the honor roll in high school, and then you get to college and you're like, whoa. Getting married, oh, how hard can marriage be? Things like military moves, you're like, well, this can't be too bad. We're going to Southern California. And having children, you're like all in love, oh, I'm gonna have a baby. And then you're like, oh, I have a baby. So, there's an awful lot to life, and it all turns out fine. It all turns out fine. So I think we figure out what we want to figure out. The people who have twins, I always thought that would be like so cool, get it, have two. And then I saw friends with twins, and I was like, oh my God. But they figured it out because they wanted to figure it out. So I think for spouses seeking career opportunities, you have to find mentors. You have to talk with employers even if they don't have an opening at that time. I got the last job I had before I retired because people always ask me for referrals for if their kids, have developmental issues. And so I thought, well, we'd been out of DC a while. I decided to look up and see what was going on, what clinics were available, and just sort of screen them so that if people asked me. So I called the Children's Therapy Center in Springfield. I said, hey, I'm not looking for a job. I just want to know what you guys do, because people always ask me for referrals. And so Susan, the director, said, well, just bring your resume. Just bring it for jollies. And so, so we talked. She looked at my resume, and she hired me on the spot, and she said, I will take you any hours you want to work, any days you want to work, when you want to work. And I was like, I'm not looking for a job. And she said, but you have a job. So, and it was awesome. I worked there until I retired. But I think we create opportunities when we create to anybody who can support us or mentor us, even if they're not within our career. If you talked with other parents before you had a baby, I'm assuming, who here has had a child and talked with other mothers before your baby was born to get the lay of the land? Okay. Would you do the same thing professionally when you're looking into employment, when you're looking into career changes? If you're looking into going back to school, before you bought your first home, didn't you sort of research housing values? What was a reasonable cost to pay? I mean, what do you do when you go buy a car? How many of us go look on the Blue Book value? You know, we research it, we find out how it doesn't crash tests, all of this kind of stuff. But many of us do not approach employment with the same sort of rational list of pros, cons, what do I need to do? So many of us do not put out a cohesive game plan for job hunting. We do less than we would for buying a car. And that is crazy. That is crazy. I also want to say that for employers, if you have not spent time talking to military spouses about their challenges and the value that they bring, you need to do that. And not even somebody that you're hiring. You need to just get together with military families and find out what will they have to offer within your organization. One, they may be clients that you will serve, and maybe not. So I just want to say that I think everybody needs to focus on the can-dos and not the can-nots, and look for the hidden gems that are in every circumstance, every situation that we find ourselves in. And hopefully today that will help to bring it all together for a lot of you here. So thanks so much for having me.